Okay, so I'm gonna try this again on the whole ideal. I got cut off last time. But what I was about to say about the whole Pavlov's dog thing is dogs don't eat bells. But that's not the whole story, but you know. Anyway, so I've drawn another picture. I was well, I had several other pictures, and then I drew this one, which is a little more regular looking. It's also where I decided maybe I don't need to turn this circle into 20. I can just turn it into 10, and this one into 40, which I decided is what I was going to do because it's tax season, and in the spirit of tax season, I thought 1040 would be appropriate. And they are called 1040s too, not 1040s, so luckily I don't have to try to figure out 1,000 separations. That would be too tough for me right now. So yeah, I have that. For that matter, it could be 5 and 20. But really, I'm also interested in making an animation, and if I did 20 and 80, that would be a lot of work, and 5 and 20, that might not give me enough to keep me interested. So I decided, you know, much as I did this one and then just copied it 4 times and frame by frame each little bit, so I laid out my grid to do that with this one, except I probably will draw 20 frames per arc, but I'm only going to be separating into 10s. But that brings back towards some of the interest in this whole ideal, and like the way, I don't know, I can't separate like being interested in math and being interested in symbols and codes or whatever. But when people talk about, you know, conspiracies and all these kind of things, and especially once you get into eyes and all-seeing eyes and all that kind of thing, but ultimately studying math, like, eyes come up, and especially, I mean, all you have to do is once you start, you know, even here, I mean, once you start mirroring images together, eyes come up everywhere. Double eyes, single eyes, like, it's just a natural part of mirroring images. You could take any image, pictures, photos, scribbles, and just mirror them like Rorschach tests, you know, and you're going to come up with this bilateral symmetry that's going to, you know, we're bilaterally symmetric mostly. Seems as though, except for, well, like, the heart's not, and the digestive system's not, but most everything else is. But there's eyes there, and you know, I've posted other videos where that type of symmetry comes up. Let's see if I can get to something really quick here. Anyway, while I'm waiting for that, so this is the way I've separated my circle, and this time, what I was trying to get to last time. So this right here is my unit circle perimeter, which I've separated into 10 equal segments. this is my epicycle circle with a quarter. This radius is a quarter of this radius. Therefore, this circumference is a quarter of this circumference. And this is also separated into 10 pieces. Therefore, this arc length, which is 1/10 of this circle, and this arc length, which is 1/10 of this quarter circle, which is 1/40th of the whole circle, this arc length, and this arc length are the same. Tau over 40. It would also be like the 10th root of I. This would be the 0th root of I. This would be I to the 1. I use my complex and my real circles interchangeably. Not that I should. It's just I try to think of them both at the same time because I don't really understand either of them. But one of the interesting things about that I came across while trying to do this was that most, or I shouldn't say most, but there would be a way to pepper the plane just using i's with coefficients and exponents. Now here I have it over 2, but you know, that could be to the -2, so it could be I to the, well, I guess you couldn't really do I to the O to the -2, but whatever your n number is here, I to the 4th. It could be I to the 4. That's too hard to explain. I over 2, so that would be I to the -2, and so on. 3i over 2, so that could be 3i to the -2. But anyway, you could pepper the plane that way. I just can't figure out exactly how yet, if it would be everything shy of Gaussian primes, or if those would be included too. It's really just kind of a vague notion at this point, but something I want to look into more. I think that's really interesting. And another interesting thing about this, like I was saying, I can't really separate between my interest in like symbols and symbolism and mathematical objects, and especially since like mathematicians are so, they're totally into putting things together and codes and all these kinds of things. There's the whole idea of how epicycles just seem to fit so naturally into the study of like roots of unity. And how by revolving this inner and outer epicycle, I know it's called something different on the inside, and I've heard that when you're dealing with this quarter circumference unit on the inside, it's called an asteroid, I think. I know there's all kinds of names and like history of the names of things that I don't understand. That makes me think of the asteroid belt. I don't know. And but anyway, how this essentially performs an iris, and how that's connected with I and so on. And of course I is so tied up with Euler and so on. And he's just such an interesting guy. He's like written more about like, he's written more things than most people I've ever read. My understanding is he's still published, like there's still every year things published because all his work isn't published yet. And it, you know, every year or two they come out with a new volume and it stretches like, you know, 40 yards long or something like that. Like it's crazy. But you gotta know, I don't know. There's just I've heard he had some kind of like paralyzed thing in his face or whatever, but to me it looks like he's always carrying the shit-eating grin. He's up to something. So that all goes into the whole idea of you know, the hidden mysteries and kind of the a lot of the tongue-in-cheek aspect of a lot of the hidden mysteries. And a lot of the hidden mysteries they're not really mysteries. It's just we don't know enough. Like there's a lot of things that aren't secret, that they're just things that like I don't know because I haven't learned enough. I don't know enough to understand them. And that's a lot of the mysteries, you know. So a lot of these people have left puzzles for us to figure out, you know, laid a path of intrigue about learning. And it's pretty humbling when you realize just how, you know, brilliant people are throughout the ages. Never mind today. Anyway, more. Let's see if I can find that on one of the things on eyes now. Yeah, like even this. Like this wasn't even a mathematical object. It was a picture I drew. But in that, just by repeating it like back and forth, overlapping it. Here's the other one. Like you come up with eyes everywhere when you start putting things back and forth and mirroring things. It's inevitable. You can come up with so many interesting patterns just by, you know, mirroring things back and forth, up and down. And so yeah, studying math, eyes come up. That's just a fact of the matter. You know, conspiracies aside, as do birds and butterflies and all those types of things. It's inevitable. Mouths, everything. Of course, some of this, the picture I'd initially drawn of this was of a face, but the facial structures that are coming in here aren't the same ones that I drew. Here looks like a profile of a face. Ear, beard, nose, eye, some sort of headpiece, but that, you know, it just came up, it just happened. Nothing to do with anything I drew. And sometimes these things mean something and sometimes they don't, but then again that also ties into the whole idea of like synchronicity and just exactly what's going on with life and the way things lens and the way things speak to things. This sounds totally crazy and preposterous, but like, you know, the way imagination works, the way I use the word tachyons even though I have no idea what they are, you know, but like we're all pieces of God, or we're all pieces of eternity, or we're all pieces of the universe, and there is no closed system and nothing is closed off, and like everything's passing through each other. Like we're made of energy, energy's passing through us, and energy's lensing around us, different types of energies and sound waves and light waves, and everything's just, you know, bouncing off each other, going through each other, going around each other, interacting with each other, misses, near misses, meets, near meets, things far off, infinitely small, infinitely large, blah blah blah. So considering all that, when something like this shows up, I mean, it's a pretty, I don't know if it comes out super great here, but that, you know, that had nothing to do with what I did. Yet it's a pretty strong representation. You know, often I wonder if these are like kind of snapshots through time. Like, is everything we do, everything we touch, like this snapshot across time? You know, the way that things lens through us and make an imprint. And that's not to sound like hokey pokey, like that has to do with what I was saying before, like how miraculous, pure reason seen. I mean, the way, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. Just how miraculous would pure reason, never mind, people talk about quantum spooky action at a distance and so on. But there's just no way to get away from like is quantum just like an intermediary phase to a more clarified picture of classicism, of perfection? You know, is the randomness of quantum phenomena just the way in which our instruments or our math, you know, isn't properly phased with what's happening? Kind of like the whole deal when you see tires on a car in a movie, because of the frame rate, sometimes they look like they're going backwards. But if you did that like fast enough with enough information, it could look completely random, and it might look like it's jumping all over the place, or just be a complete fuzz or like static. But that's because it's not phased the right way. And if your flicker rate's phased exactly right with the tire, it looks just like it would if it were moving regularly. But then as the tire moves, as its acceleration moves, or if you adjust the frame rate, it can look like it's going forward and backward and accelerating and decelerating, even if it were moving at the same speed. You know, so is that a lot of what's going on with what people call quantum things, like tachyons, you know, moving, you know, faster than the speed of light, or, you know, when people talk about negative temperatures, you know, or whatever, when we move beyond thresholds, like how remarkable, how totally inconceivable, and how miraculous would pure reason seem. It would be, you know, it would blow your mind. It would kill you. Or at least most of us. There may be those out there, you know, God's among us. For lack of a better term, because it sounds blasphemous or whatever. I mean, pick a word, but they're out there. Anyway, back to the fiveness. As this moves around, you know, so when this point here hits here, this point will essentially be on this, you know, now because I have radiuses of the big circle drawn for where it meets these points. So this will come down to here, this one will come down to here and be here. So no matter what point you draw on the circle, it's still going to fill out these lines the same way as it turns around. It's just each time it'll be a different point on there. So then when you get back around to right here, here is where the circle is at its first fifth. What a horrible drawing. But like this would be a fifth of the circle. Whoops. This is your initial circle. So here, you know, this is our 10th. Here is where it would have gone around one complete time. In respect to the center of the circle. So that's where that would be. Now, when we go to here, to the 5th, or to the 5th of the big circle, this is tau over 5 compared to this. Basically where you are there, there are 10 separations in here as there's 10 separations in here. When you've gone over to the arc length of tau over 5, you've done 8 of those 10. So this one right here, this is 1, this is 1. This one right here by then will have gone around and be touching here. So when this one is touching here, this one is going to be 2 away. So this right here, that's the 8th. That's the 8th one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one is going to be here. Now this, and it's going to be straight in line with the radius in this line. And we already know that this is tau over 5, 36 degrees. I forget the spread angle, I'm so embarrassed. 5 plus root 5 over 8? Don't quote me on that. So this one will be right here. So this angle right here is also the tau over 5, because that's a 5th of this circle. So this angle right here equals this angle right here, which equals this angle right here. So since this angle meets this angle is the same as this angle, and this is perpendicular to this axis, to the horizon, then we know that this is pointing down, that this line as it points down is square to the horizon, because this angle is the same as this angle is the same as this angle, and this line is square to the horizon. So we know that this is square to the horizon. So we know that this meets, and this is in fact right, which might be really obvious to everyone else, but it was really difficult for me to understand, and I hope I'm thinking about it right, and I hope I explained it correctly. After I watch my videos, I realize how terribly I say things and how many mistakes I make, and it's just awful. But to me, took me a while to figure out how to think about that. So yeah, I'm gonna try to do that, and just gonna see. I took a couple notes, but most of them were gibberish. If there was anything else really worth, oh yeah, that was one more thing. As I keep talking about like the plane and sphericality. Like, are we dealing with something? Are we dealing with a plane? Does this even happen in a plane? You know, because you have your phi and you have your I, and you have your 1 plus root 5. You know, which doesn't seem like that can really be a thing. At least, I don't know. It seems like that starts to reach out into dimensions, and how does that do that? And you know, this was one example of a similar idea, where how if you take a line with 3 points and another line with 3 points and connect the lines, you come up with these other lines in the middle that are straight lines. But like when you look at something like that, are you really, you know, how does that spread out into 3 dimensions? And of course, all these points could be in any which way. This was just one way to visualize it, and it doesn't, well, it's obviously, it's old, and it's just not probably the right way to do things, but it was a way of me thinking about things for a while. You know, when you look at it in a certain way, it lines up with what's behind it. I have some other drawings that I couldn't find at the moment that express that idea a little bit better. You know, but so much of the time, probably almost all the time, when we're looking at something on the plane, we're really looking at something that reaches into 3 dimensions, and that's not my idea, obviously. I mean, and real mathematicians, they know that. I mean, I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know, except for that, you know, I do think that this type of information or thinking, it needs to be part of the cultural conversation and the way people think, not so that we can all be like computer number crunchers, but because it would be nice if our minds were coordinated in a way similar to the way that the world is coordinated, that the universe, that the cosmos, that the mind of God is coordinated, and it goes every which way, but it goes in every which way in particular ways. Otherwise, we'd just be goop. You know, we're not goop. I mean, we're all kinds of things, but we're not goop. Though we can be goopy. I can be goopy. I'll leave it at that. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to animate it and try to put the pieces together in an interesting way. I hope this is helpful for someone. If only me. And I hope it's at least that hopeful.